Namo Buddhaya. Today we are going to talk about a very important aspect of Buddhism called Micchā Ājīva. In other words, we are going to talk about the importance of Micchā Ājīva and what is the definition, what is the analysis of Micchā Ājīva and how it is applicable according to the context and how it is manifested in the society. So before all, at the very inception, let us talk about what is Micchā Ājīva. Actually, Micchā Ājīva is two different words, a combination of which gives a particular meaning. When we take the simple meaning of the two words Micchā Ājīva, Micchā is the particular, it's an adjective which modifies some other nouns. Micchā stands for wrong, wrongly directed, negative. Likewise, some negative, it gives some negative interpretations, negative sense to the language. And on the other hand, the Ājīva particularly stands for the livelihood, the profession, a job or the occupation of any being. So when those two words are put together, we find the word Micchā Ājīva. So what is the definition? So in that sense, how can we define the word Micchā Ājīva? So in that way, we can say Micchā Ājīva is nothing but wrong, the negative livelihoods or unwholesome livelihoods of people. So when we mean Micchā Ājīva, one might think that it is confined to the lay people, only to the lay society, but it is not so. When we mean Micchā Ājīva, it is fair to all laity and the clergy alike. So in that sense, so we should focus our attention how Buddhism defines Micchā Ājīva. So any aspect, any phenomena in Buddhism, it has its applicability to both clergy and laity alike. So in here also, Micchā Ājīva is fair to both clergy and laity. So although the Buddhism has clearly given a particular definition for Micchā Ājīva pertaining to the clergy, but nowhere in the Pali canon it says that it gives a definition for the Micchā Ājīva of the laity. So what is the definition, or what is the analysis of Micchā Ājīva of the clergy? It is nothing. It is nothing but it has three aspects of definition. The first aspect is a Buddhist monk or a Buddhist nun should refrain from 5 evil characteristics, to which we call in Pali kuhana, lapana, nemittikata, nippesikata and labena labang nijiginsanata. So when we define the words in English language, kuhana is skimming, lapana is talking, nemittikata is hinting, kuhana, lapana, nemittikata, nippesikata is belittling, and lastly labena laba nijikinsanata, it is pursuing gain with gain. So these a monk should refrain from those 5 evil characteristics. On the other hand, he should adhere to the 5 categories of disciplinary precepts promulgated by the Buddha, to which we call apatti, pertaining to the livelihood of the person. So we find these 6 categories of apatti in Parivara Pali and in the Vinaya Pitaka also. And particularly in the Visuddhimagga, the Bhadantacharya Buddha Ghosa, Venerable Buddha Ghosa defines these things in detail. And on the other hand, the monk or the nun should refrain from the 21-fold of anēsana, to which we call impropriety in English. So fulfilling all these 3 requirements, if he or she can abide by these 3 kind of aspects of this definition, surely he will lead a life with Samma Ājīva and refraining from Micchā Ājīva. So although it has given this sharp definition for the clergy, but nowhere in Buddhism the Buddha has given a particular definition of Micchā Ājīva for the clergy. But there's a popular reference to the Micchā Ājīva of the laity in the Vanijja Sutta of the Sutta Pitaka. It gives only 5 types of band trades, to which we call Sattha Vanijja, Mansa Vanijja, Majja Vanijja, and Visa Vanijja. Sattha Vanijja, so if we translate them into English, those are trading of weapons, that is Sattha Vanijja. And again the other Sattha Vanijja, trading of living beings or the slaves. And the Mansa Vanijja, the trading of animals for meat. And Majja Vanijja, trading of intoxicants. And lastly the Visa Vanijja, the trading of intoxicants. But seeing this, one would think that this is the definition given for the laity of the wrong livelihood, but it is not so. So although the Buddha has not given a sharp definition for this wrong livelihood of the person, of the layman, of the lay person, but there are so many related wrong livelihood related teachings, the teachings expounded by the Buddha pertaining to the wrong livelihood of the clergy in so many discourses. So it is scattered everywhere in the canonical literature, but nobody has tried to put them together, agglomerate those things together and give a sharp definition. So on the other hand, it is worthwhile to think, why should we talk about Micchā Ājīva? Why should we give such an importance to this topic? So it is also an important aspect to talk about. The main reason for that is if we examine all the criminal activities taking place around this world and all the crimes happening around us, most of them they have a linking, they have a connection towards the wrong livelihoods of the person. In that sense, we should try to understand the nature of these wrong livelihood, how to refrain from them. And if we understand them very clearly only, we can refrain from them. Likewise, I think the points which I mentioned up to now will give you a general understanding about this topic. We were talking about so far about the manifestation of the phenomenon or the teaching taught in Buddhism, to which we call Micchā Ājīva, and its exact opposite, to which we call Samma Ājīva. As we know, so many scholars in the world, in the past and the present alike, has written about so many things, about a great deal of literature about this topic. So in this point, we are going to discuss about some modern perspectives of Micchā Ājīva and how about its importance of examining and also. So in this context, we should think, we should examine why there is a great deal of enthusiasm in the world to research upon this particular concept called Micchā Ājīva, and why people should learn about this, and why there is a great deal of enthusiasm among the literati or among the academia of the world about this topic. So I think in previous point also I described the importance of this learning about this Micchā Ājīva. But here we are going to discuss about some examples about this enthusiasm, how people have expressed their enthusiasm. Actually, there's no other way to examine this particular point other than reading the literature written by so many scholars. So in this context, in this at this juncture, we find several noteworthy scholars who have written volumes of books about this Micchā Ājīva and related subjects. Among them, there are a few very popular names. To name them, namely E.M. Schumacher is one, and again Peter Harvey is another, and the local scholar Professor Nandasen Ratnapala is another one, and likewise so many scholars have written on this. So if we focus our attention about the masterpieces written by them, to name some, The Small is Beautiful is written by E.M. Schumacher. This book contains a separate chapter about Buddhist economics, how Buddhism involves, how Buddhism teaches about this Micchā Ājīva and the Samma Ājīva, and how it helps the humankind to generate a good society. And also in this particular masterpiece, E.M. Schumacher very particularly says that there is a popular myth in the world which is highly which gives dangerous result to the society. That particular notion, or the wrong notion, is nothing but the problem of production has been solved. He says very direct, straightforwardly, this is a particular myth which exists, which prevails in the world. So on the other hand, people tend to think that with the modern development of the modern science and the modern technology, so if we have this technology, we don't need any other thing, but it will give you all the solutions for all your problems. But he says it is not so. So thinking that problem of production has been solved by seeing the large scale companies, large scale enterprises, how they produce a great number of products, a huge amount of products, seeing them, people would think now our problem of production has been solved. But he says it is not so. For an instance, in the Middle East countries, they tend to produce so many types of oils, and they excavate them from the earth, and they dig the earth and they unearth them and sell it to other countries, thinking that that is their production. But when we focus our attention very closely to that matter, we see they are not products, they are mere capital. The oil, the resource of oil that we dig into the earth and unearth them, they are not profits, they are capitals. If we are handling them right way, we should invest them in our production process, and then only we get the result, then only we get the fruit. But taking the capital as the profit in a wrong manner, they tend to think that the problem of production has been solved. So on that basis, they think that they have everything, they don't need to bother about anything else. Then they do all the other wrong livelihoods and wrong practices in the society. So that is a very popular perspective of one of the most popular scholars in this field of Samma Ājīva, or the livelihood. For another instance, Peter Harvey, writing his introduction to Buddhist ethics, he divides the concept of ethics into four. To mention some, it is normative ethics, meta ethics, applied ethics, and descriptive ethics. So when we focus our attention to which category can we put Buddhist economics, so it is worthwhile to think that we can put under Buddhist ethics under the heading of normative ethics. So on the other hand, so when we focus our attention about the local scholar, the famous sociologist, late Professor Ananda, he has written volumes of literature about this sociological approach of this livelihood. To name few, as a result of his very practical researching methods, self-participant methods he has used in Sri Lanka, disguising himself as a beggar at times. He has written a few volumes, to name some, the beggars in Sri Lanka, and likewise there are so many very useful books which give a practical knowledge about this wrong livelihood of the profession to which we call beggar. So one might wonder that is beggary, or is begging a profession? So when we read through all these volumes, so we can't help coming to this conclusion that yes, beggary or the begging is a profession in Sri Lanka. So but apparently it looks not so. But when we examine this concept and how the practicalities of this problem, we see it is a profession in Sri Lanka which falls under wrong livelihood. So he explains in his book, he explicates in his book so many examples for this. So he used to mention there are beggar training schools in Sri Lanka in which beggars are properly trained by beggar trainers, and they teach how to beg. So likewise it has become their profession, so from which they can't take out of their life. So so this is the background of the modern perspectives of wrong livelihood, or to which we call Micchā Ājīva. And I would like to focus our attention towards another important aspect of this livelihood subject. So one might think that soldiering or the military service is a wrong livelihood at the very site of this particular concept. So so many scholars in the world have tried to paint this profession of soldiering as a wrong livelihood. To name some, there are some scholars like Michael Jerison, who wrote the Buddhist Fury and the Buddhist Warfare, the two books in which he has tried to paint the Buddhist monk as a person or a propaganda which helps promoting the warfare, which is a very negative, very baseless phenomena he used to express. So likewise, coming back to this concept, the soldiering. So how does Buddhism see soldiering, and is it a wrong livelihood according to Buddhism? So although we apparently we see that soldiering is a wrong livelihood, but when we focus our attention, when we closely analyze this profession, so why do we need military service to a country? So had Buddha rejected this particular profession as a wrong livelihood, and did he advise the kings of then current society to get rid of this service and to dissolve this security services or the military services in a country? No, he didn't. So why didn't he do that? But on the other hand, we see in this particular profession it involves at times some sort of violence also, which cannot help avoiding, because actually in a security forces or the military profession, sometimes they have to use their force to protect the innocent from the enemy, not to invade another country, but not to kill another without a reason, but just to defend their citizens. So if any country is using their military service to invade other countries unnecessarily and kill people without a proper basis, or harming the beings without a proper basis, surely I admit that it falls into wrong livelihood. But what if a country's military forces are living within the frontiers of a country and making sure that all the law and order are set according to the rules of the country, and their citizens are safe from the clutches of their enemy, and merely to protect the safeguard the innocent people of a country, can we still call it a wrong livelihood? I think we cannot say like that. So even the Buddha did not involve in this in rejecting this military service from a country. But according to Buddhism, so we should accept that the military service, yes, it involves some sort of defensive violence, but it is not offensive violence. We should remember that. And but on the other hand, so many people from locally and internationally have tried to paint this profession of soldiering as wrong livelihood. As I mentioned before, apart from Michael Jerison, the Thambaya or the Obesekar of Sri Lankan scholars, in their volumes of literature, they have questioned this profession of soldiering and the authenticity of soldiering. But there is another group of scholars who sees this problem in a different angle. So so far in this journey of this academic literati, the journey of this academic literati or the academia, they have given they have given a great deal of importance to 2 points pertaining to the soldiering. So what are these 2 points? The first one is there is a conflict between the first precept of the Panchasila, which is taught in Buddhism, and the profession of soldiering. Can we still involve in the profession of soldiering and still can we still protect the first precept of Buddhism? And the second point is, can we justify the warfare according to Buddhism? So these are the 2 questions they have raised again and again in the eyes of the international community and the local community. But in today's world, there are other group of scholars who have reiterate the importance of another aspect of the same problem. Instead, they have seen how the individual soldiers, how they have seen the dilemma they are facing in the battlefield, and on the other hand, they are trying to find answers for the particular question which is frequently asked from the Sri Lankan soldier. The question is this: will I get negative repercussions or negative results if I kill the enemy in the battlefield? So this is the very popular question frequently asked by the soldier who is confronting with this enemy in the battlefield. So apart from instead of answering the 2 questions, why can Buddhism justify the warfare, or can we still safeguard the first precept and still involve in the soldiering? They have raised the question: can we help the soldier to help in sorting out the dilemma they are facing with, as I mentioned before. So likewise, these are the modern perspectives we can see in the academia or the academic field pertaining to the livelihood. Taking all these things together as a whole, so we should mention that there is a rising enthusiasm in the world about researching about wrong livelihood and how to get rid of wrong livelihood and how to inculcate right livelihood in the society. I think it is very important contemporaneous issue to focus our attention to this question of livelihood, and we should develop ourselves and all together as a society to engage in right livelihood and making our lives prosperous. So far we have been talking about a general introduction. We were giving a general introduction to the concept of Micchā Ājīva, and we were talking about the modern perspectives of this specific concept we find in Buddhism, to which we call Samma Ājīva, and its negative aspect, the Micchā Ājīva. Now, so I think it's also important to research upon and it's also important to focus our attention towards the modern application of Micchā Ājīva. So although we have a theoretical knowledge about the concept of Micchā Ājīva as taught in Buddhism, if we don't have any insights of the practicalities of this concept, how it is operated in the society, in the communities, locally and internationally, so I think it is a lapse of our knowledge. So therefore, let us focus our attention about some modern examples of Micchā Ājīva, how it is seen in this particular society. So to name few of them, I think it is important to refer to some volumes of literature which has been written divulging this information to this world. So to them, there are a particular group of wrong livelihoods to which we call theft related wrong livelihoods. So theft is a popular or very famous wrong livelihood. Even the average man of the world knows that thieving or the theft, stealing things from others without their permission, is wrong, and sometimes people involved in this wrong act as their livelihood. So when we analyze, when we examine the literature written on theft and how it is operated in the world. So for an example, in ancient times, it is said that there's an author called Shukladas who has written a specific book about this theft, and she mentions that according to the records of Gandhin, the famous author, he mentions about that in olden times there are about a prevalence of a standard book which called a standard book for housebreaking, and it is the authorship is ascribed to a particular writer called Karnisutta. So when we examine that point, if they had a particular standard book for housebreaking, so it is worthwhile to think that, so we tend to think, one might tend to think that there should be an abundance of this thieving or theft in then current society. The theft should be flourishing in that society. That is why some authors have compelled to write even a book about how to break houses and a standard book for housebreaking. So apart from that, there are so many other wrong livelihoods in today's world and also in the olden times. So when we focus our attention towards another modern wrong livelihood, so we can say white collar crimes, to which we call a particular standard of crime which has been which has been practiced by educated people and who has a professional knowledge about this particular livelihood. But although they have a professional knowledge about their livelihood, although they are well trained and they are highly professional, and although they are highly paid, but still their livelihood is in the unwholesome side of the society. So people with good sound knowledge of language and people with good knowledge and who are well qualified in their education, if they still do criminal things as their livelihood, people tend to think that that is a wrong livelihood, and they are white collar criminals. And as an extension of that concept of white collar crimes, there is in today's world which has been prevalent in a few decades in the past also, we find another very dangerous wrong livelihood, to which we call economic hitmen. In shortened form we call EHMs. So there was a groundbreaking revelation done in recent past by a particular scholar whose name is John Perkins. He wrote one of the bestsellers in the world, a particular book called Confessions of an Economic Hitman. The speciality, the most important thing about this book is the perpetrator himself has authored the book. In other words, John Perkins was a EHM. So what is the EHM or the economic hitman stand for? So generally we know hitmen are the people who kill people for money. If somebody gives him money and asks him to kill another, they will do without thinking any further. So in the context of economic hitman, so it is the particular word itself is self-explanatory. Economic hitmen are the people who kill economies of countries. So you might wonder that how can they kill economies? So when we examine about this concept further, as mentioned in that book, it is very they have very subtle plans, and that is how the giants of the today's world, for an instance the US, has become the world leader through this unwholesome practices itself. They have become the world leaders. So when we closely analyze this concept of EHM, economic hitman, so how do they kill the economies? So they are being trained under EHM trainers. So what do? They go to the developing countries with the help of World Bank and institutions like World Bank and the USAID. So the World Bank and USAID, they funnel a lot of money to the giant corporations of the world, and these corporations, they hire these economists, to which we call economic hitmen, and they ask them to go to the developing countries and they ensnare their economies. And what do? They promise some large scale projects to them, and they go for the cheapest labor. They search for the cheapest labor, and they go for the cheapest resources, and they build highways, and they build grounds, and they build so many big buildings. And when they find another place with cheaper labor, and what do? They give up all the other projects on all these developing countries, which has been operating under some loan schemes given by the World Bank. And when they give up those countries, the developing country itself has become indebted to all these world banks and the giant countries. So being indebted to them, they will do anything they ask them to do. So likewise, they make one empire of the world, and they become the world leaders, and ultimately they kill these economies. This John Perkins, the perpetrator himself, after doing that knowingly or unknowingly, at the last stage of his life, has thought about this the wrong deed he had done, and he had written a book to reveal this malpractice to the world. So this is one of the shining examples of a wrong livelihood, to which we call EHM. There are so many manifestations of EHMs in the world also. To name few, EHMs, the EHM trainers, the CIA sanctioned jackals, and some elements of US military all fall under this wrong livelihoods. So for another instance, the wrong livelihoods are using the evil qualities called deceit and trickery and preening narcissism as vital elements of their process. So for an instance, one of the authors write how in the past a particular merchant had advised his son how to engage in a trading. So this is the advice given by this merchant to his son. He asked his son to don't disclose your heart to others, but try to feel of their hearts. Don't expose your plans to others and try to identify theirs. Be chary with your words and earn money in whatever the way you know, in wholesome manners and otherwise. And this is take it as an opportunity to earn money as much as possible. Don't try to help others' projects, but stick to your own. And then going through this particular advice, you will see how nasty, how dangerous, and how unwholesome these advices to a particular society. So hearing those advices, that son would do everything he wished to, and he will not become a good citizen or a good trader or good merchant whatsoever. So likewise, the literature itself gives plenty of examples about the prevalence of wrong livelihoods, not only in today's society but also in the olden times as well. So taking all these things together, we can see that there is this concept of wrong livelihood is operating in the world as a vicious circle, and it is very easy to engage in a wrong livelihood and earn money, and on the other hand, it is very difficult to refrain from wrong livelihood and stick to a right livelihood and earn your living in a wholesome way. So what Buddha says is one should earn his living in a wholesome way. If he earns his living in a wholesome way only, he enjoys his happiness in this world. If he can enjoy his life in a wholesome way in this world only, he can enjoy his next life also. So this is a recurrent teaching which we can see in Buddhism, and that is the advice from the Buddha to the people, and to the not only in today's generation but also in the future as well. So these teachings, they don't change with time. These are everlasting teachings. So I think we should research more about this concept, Micchā Ājīva, and it is the counterpart of this concept, to which we call Sammā Ājīva. It is one of the vital aspects of the Noble Eightfold Path, to which we call Ārya Ashtangika Margya in Sinhala, and Aryo Attangiko Maggo in Pali. So this is the fifth aspect of the continuous process of the Ārya Ashtangika Margya, starting from Sammaditthi. The Buddhism says there are three things which is working around this concept of Sammā Ājīva. What are these three things? These are Sammaditthi, the Samma Vayama, and Samma Sati. What is Sammaditthi? There's right view, and Samma Sati is a right mindfulness, and Samma Vayama is right effort. So if we have an good view, a right view only, we can refrain from Micchā Ājīva. So if we have a good effort, if we put a good effort to refrain from Micchā Ājīva only, we can refrain from it and we can engage in Sammā Ājīva. So whenever we are doing a livelihood, if we maintain a good mindfulness only, we can engage in that specific right livelihood without indulging in wrong livelihood. So in this way, I think it's worthwhile to focus our attention about these three concepts, which I should repeat again, nothing but Samma Ditti, Samma Vayama, and Samma Sati, which circle around this wholesome concept, Sammā Ājīva. I think as we discussed so far, people should think about this Sammā Ājīva and one's livelihood. So taking all these things together, I think we can give a modern interpretation to wrong livelihood, which we can use as a touchstone to testify one's livelihood. So let me put it in this way: any intrinsically evil bodily action or a verbal action, when chosen as a livelihood of a person to earn his living, is called Micchā Ājīva. So this particular term, praise, intrinsically evil action, will involve the breaching of any one or more precepts of the five precepts. Not only that, the engagement of these three evil characteristics. What are they? The pariyesana tanha, the insatiable craving, and the hatred in the form of violence, to which we call dosa or dvesha in Sinhala, and lastly the delusion, the moha. So in other words, if you violate any one of the five precepts, or you engage with insatiable craving or the anger or the delusion in your livelihood, which involves any intrinsically evil bodily or verbal action, then you are indeed involving in a wrong livelihood. If you are not involving in a wrong livelihood, and you are leading a right livelihood. So I think this common interpretation can be used as a touchstone, as a guiding beacon to testify your livelihood, to see whether it falls to wrong livelihood or not. With all that, I think the points we have discussed so far must have enlightened you in this useful teaching to which we call Samma Ājīva, and its negative aspect of Micchā Ājīva. And it will teach you how to refrain from Micchā Ājīva and engage in Samma Ājīva. May the Noble Triple Gem bless you.